All right, there's been some comments on videos recently which I suspect are by people that have a very different opinion to me on the direction of travel of the club. Disagreement and opinion is all part of this, and it's great as long as it's respectful, there's a point to it, there's context to it, and it's not aggressive. So I welcome that because it's engagement for the channel, which is what I wanted. This today is sort of my right to reply because I suspect that the people that made the comments, I don't recognise their names. I suspect they're people that have either stumbled across the channel and maybe just watched one video, or perhaps they're new to the channel. There's a couple of people that have made comments that probably won't watch again, given the undertone of the comments that they made. But nonetheless, I'm happy to talk about what I'm going to talk about anyway. So I'm going to give my stance in case anyone is coming back and watching again, and a bit more meat on the bones rather than just make comments and replies to specific people, which I have done, but give a bit more meat on the bones of my stance and why I have such strong beliefs about the Glazers and Ineos. And I'm going to start with the Glazers. So my stance on the Glazers, I detest them. They've ruined my football club. I've watched 21 years of a racketeering operation dressed up as football ownership. Incompetence, greed, negligence, commercial first ethos, rewarding mediocrity. We've had over £1 billion spent on the interest of the debt that they put on this football club. They've put not a penny into it, and they've taken a lot out of it. Sir Jim Ratcliffe gave them £1.2 billion as a strategic investment to Manchester United, and they pocketed every single penny of it. They stole every single penny of it. That's not their money. It's money for Manchester United, and they stole it. They are absolute scum. When Ferguson retired, that was a turning point for me. I've said several times since, beyond his retirement, Man United should never regularly finish outside of the top four. Not because we're entitled to finish in the top four, but because it's common sense. You can have the odd season here or there, fine, but not regularly outside the top four, because for 20 years, you look at the profile of the club when he left and the standing of the club when he left. For 20 years, we hadn't finished outside the top three, and we won 13 titles out of 20. We had the third biggest income in world football. And for me, we're a prestige club. And what I mean by that is Barcelona, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, AC Milan, unfortunately probably Liverpool, they're the other prestige club. Prestige clubs don't finish outside of the top places in their leagues. AC Milan had a bit of a period of time when they did, when there was match fixing scandals and stuff like that, but it never lasted too long. They're always there or thereabouts. Liverpool, to look at an example closer to home, went 30 years without winning a top flight title. But even in that lean spell, the lowest they ever finished was 8th, and that was twice. The vast majority of times they were in the top 3 or 4, and they would, if they weren't, it was top 6. So as bad as it got for them, they weren't hitting the lows that we've hit. We finished 15th. We finished 8th, we finished 7th, we finished 6th a few times, we finished 5th once, I believe. We finished 2nd twice, and we have finished in the top 4 as well a couple of times, but I think we finished outside of the top 4 more than we finished in it. And the only explanation to that, it's not cyclical, it's the owners. Because a club with semi-competent owners of the standard of Man United when Ferguson left, there would be a regression. Of course there would. But the regression we've gone through is disproportionate. There would be a proportionate regression if you had semi-competent owners. So it's all on them. And we have to look back all the way to when Ferguson retired and the decisions they made, so that I can talk about why I think they're accountable for pretty much everything we see now. So, around obviously the same time Ferguson retired, David Gill left. Who did they replace him with? They replaced him with a banker, Ed Woodward, who brokered the deal for them to take the club. A glazer man, someone who basically was going to do a lot of commercial deals to make them more money, but what he knows about football you could write on a piece of confetti. I think it was when Moyes got sacked, or it might have been Van Gaal, he went apparently to see Jurgen Klopp and spouted some shit about United being like a Disneyland of football, and Jurgen Klopp saw through him and basically told him where to go, and Jurgen Klopp ended up at Liverpool and had 10 successful years there. And people say to me, Jurgen Klopp would have never have come to United, his missus went to university at Liverpool, it was always written in the stars, he always had a soft spot for Liverpool. It's easy to say that when he had 10 years at Liverpool. But if you don't send a complete and utter dickhead to speak to him, maybe we might have had a chance. So Ed Woodward was an absolute, unmitigated failure at Manchester United, if your criteria for success is winning. But that's not what it was. He was great for the Glazers because he made them loads of money. Commercial deals, he was brilliant. Winning on the football pitch, he was shit. But he just kept getting rewarded. So there's your first mistake. Ferguson was able to pick his successor. Dangerous territory, particularly when his successor that he chose was David Moyes. A lot of bullshit comes out of United, including from Ferguson himself. I heard him say, we wanted Mourinho, we wanted Jose, but he'd already given his word to Chelsea. I call bullshit, because I've also heard that Mourinho was in a hotel room when he found out that David Moyes got the United job, and he was in tears about it because he thought he was going to get it. And Mourinho was the only guy with big enough bollocks to come and take over from Ferguson at that time. By the time we ended up getting Mourinho, he was a different guy. Something had changed. But he was the only one with the balls to do it, in my opinion. And we went with David Moyes. So, again, a football person who's strong sees that that's a mistake. It wasn't just Ferguson and Gill though. It was an ageing team. So we had Ferdinand, Vidic, Evra, Giggs, Scholes. Scholes' last season was the season when Ferguson retired. Even Rooney was probably not quite the player that he had been in the past. So there was a real core group of players that were stalwarts, that were big characters of the last few years who needed replacing. 2 points on this that relate back to the Glazers. One, why did you not replace them and have that succession plan almost like while they were already there? Why had that team been allowed to get so old? Why had you not replaced them while Ferguson was already there? Well, the reason being, they knew Ferguson could get titles out of that team, ageing or not, because the guy was a genius, and they didn't want to spend any money, so they didn't do it. Why are you not, while Ferguson is still there, buying Toni Kroos, Luka Modric, Gareth Bale, Bonucci, the centre back? Why are you not buying that calibre of player? Because you know he's going to get you titles anyway. So instead they bought Phil Jones and Chris Smalling, who they would say were the successors to Vidic and Ferdinand. Two good lads, by the way, Jones and Smalling. I'm not going to mock them like other people have. And they cost a few quid. But they're not of the calibre to replace Vidic and Ferdinand. You've got to be looking at top-class centre-backs to be able to do that. But they wanted to do it on the cheap. So they'll claim they were doing that. They weren't. Let's say, having decided to do it that way, that you're just going to rely on Ferguson and kick the can down the road like the Glazers always have done and will always continue to do when it comes to saving a few quid. All right, you've appointed David Moyes. Back then, there was no such thing as financial fair play, and even if there had been, we'd have been all right because Glazeronomics had been in operation for a long time. The summer that David Moyes comes in, again, I hear about all these nearly signings. We nearly signed Gareth Bale. We nearly brought Ronaldo back to the club. Ander Herrera nearly signed a year earlier than he did. But what did we actually do? We signed Marouane Fellaini. So why did you not, if you're taking football seriously, and that's your primary objective, why did you not go and sign, again, the likes of Cruz, Modric, Bale, Ander Herrera, Ronaldo coming back? Do you know what? Go and do it then, because you've got the money. You pocketed the money for Ronaldo, never spent a penny of it. And United would have been fine getting those players in terms of finances. We'd have had the money to do it. And then that safeguards David Moyes, doesn't it? And if it doesn't, if he's still shit and it doesn't go very well, then all right, you replace him and you get a manager in who's then got a team that's ready to go. You don't want to do that because you don't want to spend any money. False economy though, because a couple of years later when we went on some stupid spending spree with Angel Di Maria and the like, you're just throwing bad money at the problem. Again, that comes back to the CEO. You've got a guy who knows nothing about football, throwing money around, trying to basically get his cock out to show how Man United can go and operate in the transfer market, but buying the wrong types of players. So even when they did release the purse strings, they did it wrong. It's absolute, complete and utter car crash. But I go back to that time because it snowballed from there. We could have arrested the decline. We could have established ourselves as the team that were getting in that top 3 or 4, but not quite winning titles, with better players, with better contingency plans. They didn't have it because they don't know anything about football, and they go back to it: incompetence, neglect, and greed. Those 3 things. All of that is why they didn't do the things I'm suggesting they should have done. So it comes to 2022, and it's ran its course. They have no money left. They can't take dividends anymore at that point. The club is skint. The stadium's falling apart. They don't want to do anything about it themselves because they never want to put a penny into it. So they search for, inverted commas, strategic investment or a full takeover of the club. And this is where ineos come in. Now, one of the comments I'm referring to at the start of the video said that the choice was Joel Glazer stayed as the basically the chief executive and running the club, or they got ineos in and Sir Jim Ratcliffe employed football people. First of all, there wasn't a choice for Joel Glazer just to stay without investment. They couldn't have done that. They'd run out of money. They'd run out of road. They'd skinted the club, and they couldn't take any more loans out and more debt and stuff like that because there's tighter regulations on things like that now. So they were screwed. They needed either to sell up or for someone to come and rescue them. And what ineos have done effectively is rescued them. To the second part of the point, that the ineos brought in football people. They have brought in football people, but not with any pedigree, which I'm going to come to in a minute because I'm going to talk about ineos in a second. So ineos, for me, bringing it to them, that's my stance on the Glazers, bringing it to ineos. They, for me, are the Glazers' mates. They've come in and allowed the Glazers to stay. They've made some decisions that the Glazers couldn't be arsed making because the Glazers have no interest in making actual decisions regarding Man United and taking some responsibility and, infrastructure or strategic executive level. They don't want to do any stuff like that. So ineos have come in and done that for them. They're going to make United a lot more financially efficient so that the Glazers can start getting their greedy mitts on the money again. That's what they're doing. And I don't doubt that Sir Jim Ratcliffe, if you give him a choice, would you want United to be successful or not successful on the football pitch? He'd say, yes, I want them to be successful, but we're surrounded by clubs who are already so much further ahead than us, and also are obsessed with success and have a lot more money. So you do the math, it doesn't add up. The theme of some of the comments I've received recently is, not explicitly, but the theme I get is, give ineos time. Give them goodwill. They deserve more than more goodwill than maybe what I'm giving them. I look at it in two ways. Give them more time on the pitch and off the pitch. On the pitch, the reason why I don't think they need more time is because the reference point I've got, the only reference point I've got, is their ownership of Nice. And Nice are no better off, in fact they're probably worse off, than when Ineos took over. If you speak to Nice fans, not that I have, but sort of I've read a lot about what Nice fans think about Ineos, they hate them. Nice were ticking along pretty nicely. They were doing all right. They were punching above the weight. And Ineos have come in with these promises of making them a regular team in the Champions League and all this stuff and challenging for titles. It's not happened. So Ineos have no pedigree whatsoever in football. So you give it more time, fine. There's no blueprint for success there. But it's off the pitch I'm more concerned with. Ratcliffe, when he came in, said he was going to put the Manchester back into Manchester United. He's done the opposite. The workforce was bloated, it was inflated, it needed to be made more efficient. But he's halved it. And that for me feels over the top. The other impact that has is a lot of the people that he has made redundant or no longer work for the club. The United people, the people who care about the club, the people who support the club, who take a lot of pride in the fact that they work for the club that they support, and they're the personality of the club, they're the heart of the club. And in terms of morale and the knock-on effect of that, and also I think symbolically what that tells the fans is we're moving away from something that made us quite special, because for as big as Man United are, something I've always been quite proud of is that players from here, there and everywhere come in and said it feels like a family. Well, we're moving away from that. But the tipping point for me was last Christmas when I found out that Ineos had cut a £40,000 donation to the ex-players charity. £40,000, a complete drop in the ocean. To save money, 40,000 quid. And when Gary Neville, fair play to him, questioned Sir Jim Ratcliffe on that in the interview he did with him, Sir Jim Ratcliffe said, and I quote, if you look after the pennies, it takes the pounds take care of itself, whatever that expression is. Which is astounding in itself. 5 minutes later, they were talking about the Glazers, and Gary Neville said, you gave the Glazers £1.2 billion as a strategic investment to Manchester United. Would it not make more sense, given that they're sat on that money, for them to pay off some of the debt? Because obviously that is absolutely crippling the club financially in terms of FFP and PSR and all these different things, and also just because it's the right thing to do. And he said, and again I quote, throwing money at this isn't the way to do it. And you're like, but 5 minutes earlier you just said looking after the pennies is going to take care of the pounds regarding a £40,000 donation to a local ex-players charity. I've heard all I need to hear, I'm sorry. Time doesn't make any difference on that. I know your intent. I know which side your bread is buttered. I don't need more time to know more about this. In terms of the values of this football club and the DNA of this football club and the principles, you don't get it. Maybe you do get it, but you don't care. So, no, absolutely, I don't think they deserve more time. And people say, Ineos are good for United, or they will be good if you give them more time. No, Ineos are good for the Glazers. Please don't mistake the Glazers for United. What's good for the Glazers is invariably not good for Man United. Because the £1.2 billion was given for United and they pocketed all of it. So Ineos are good for the Glazers, they're not good for Man United. My criteria to be happy as a Man United fan is twofold. On the pitch and off the pitch. On the pitch, I want to see a team that I can identify with, that plays attractive football, that is somewhat linked to the spirit of the, I suppose, of the DNA of the club, and I want to see a team challenging for silverware. Off the pitch, I want to see a club that values its fans, gives the fans a good experience, that is rooted in its local area and has a strong connection to its local community, and again upholds the values and the principles of the history of the club. Ineos tick none of those boxes for me, none of them, and they have no intention to either, in my opinion. Ineos are the glazers' mates who've come in to make United more efficient, to use their influence regarding the stadium, call in a few favours with local government, etc., to make the glazers rich. None of it is to the benefit of Manchester United. If you disagree, please comment and say why. Say why you disagree, and give me some meat on the bones of it, and give me context as to what you think Ineos are doing is good for Manchester United. Not for the Glazers, for Manchester United. I don't think we're going to find a person that can do the next thing I'm going to suggest. If there's someone who thinks the Glazers have been good for Man United, then please, by all means, make a comment, but please substantiate it with, I don't know what you could substantiate it with, but please do. So, as I said, this has been a right to reply. This has been a reiteration of my very strong stance that I have on both parties that unfortunately own this football club. The Glazers, and maybe a bit more contentious might be Ineos. Those two fractions, those two entities. For me, they are leading the club to rack and ruin. They have I was going to say no intent. That's probably unfair. Their primary objective is not for Man United to be successful on the football pitch, and our opposition, who we're trying to compete against, ultimately, if we wanted to be right at the top end of the Premier League again, they're all better run. They've got more money, and they've got more of a motivation towards being successful. So it's not happening. If you disagree, please tell me why. Nice one. Glazers out.